Perfect. Hi, everybody, and welcome to ZAA's Professional Development Webinar Series. My name is Kate, and I'm the chair of the Professional Development Committee. And for those of you joining us for the first time, ZAA is the Zoological Association of America. It's a nonprofit, member-based accrediting organization that's dedicated to responsible wildlife management, conservation, and education. ZAA upholds the highest levels of professional standards in animal welfare, safety, and ethics. At ZAA, we advocate, educate, and conserve. We advocate by proactively supporting our members, animals, visitors, and industry. We educate by providing professional development to our community and beyond. And we conserve by promoting conservation efforts and awareness of all wild things. We have some great webinars coming up in our training series. All of our webinars are Wednesdays at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. So on March 12th, we will be talking about an overview of blood draw training. And on March 19th, we will be breaking down the fourth wall, talking about creative ways to facilitate and encourage guests to be active participants versus passive spectators. If you are not a ZAA member and you'd like to have access to all of our past webinars, you can scan the QR code on your screen, join ZAA, and all of those webinars will be yours. A few reminders for the audience today. You guys are going to remain muted at all times, but don't worry, there's going to be a Q&A at the end of the presentation. You can type your questions in using the Q&A button, which is located generally at the bottom of your screen. If you see a question that you like, give it a thumbs up, and that will boost the question to the top where it's more likely to be asked. This and all previously recorded webinars are available on the members only page at zooassociation.org. And if you would like a certificate of participation, please email membership@zooassociation.org. Tonight's presentation, we are so excited. We have Steve Martin, the president and CEO of Natural Encounters, talking about advanced animal training strategies. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to you, Steve.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Let me share my screen there. There we go. All right. Does everything look good, Tatiana?
It doesn't look like it's full screen in presentation mode.
Okay. Let's see what happened there. Isn't that strange? It was so great a minute ago.
It was. It worked perfectly during our practice sessions. Do you want to hit share screen again and see if it'll give you a different option?
I'm going to do that. Just a moment. Here we go. All right. Let me find it here. Oh, I see where we are. Sure.
You know, Steve, it looked like you may just need to hit full screen on that presentation mode, and that might take it up too. There it is.
So simple. All righty. Well, let me arrange over here on my side. Well, first of all, thank you so much, Tatiana and Kate. I really appreciate you folks both being here for me. And I love sharing the information. You know, I've been a professional animal trainer all my life. I guess people think of me as the bird guy. And a lot of people don't realize that way back in like 1984, I worked at Singapore Zoo and did everything from primates to elephants and everything else. I helped transition their elephant training from the most brutal I'd ever seen to the most positive I'd ever seen. So I've been around a long time, done a lot of interesting and fun stuff, and really, really happy to share those things with everybody. And let me get started here. We're going to talk about advanced animal training strategies. And you know, it's a 45-minute presentation, 15 minutes of Q&A. And so I kind of put together a few different presentations, and I'll rush through a little bit of it, but really happy to answer questions at the end if you have any. I'm going to talk about these particular things right here. Let me know if that cursor is on the screen or not.
I do see your cursor.
Okay, I'll try and get it off the screen.
There,
So
it's
here's what we're
gone.
going to talk about tonight. Choice and control, give an animal a voice through its body language, timeouts. We're going to talk about timeouts very briefly, and clear two-way communication. That is us communicating with the animal through cues and prompts and bridging stimuli, things like that. But just as importantly, animals communicating with us through their body language. So let's cover, first of all, choice and control. There are buzzwords in the zoological world these days, and a lot of people think of them as sort of one concept. You give an animal choice and control, and you improve its welfare. Not quite that easy. They're very distinct and different. So, first of all, choice, distribution of operant behavior among alternative sources of reinforcement. Now, this little crow right here can fly to Amy's hand, can fly up to the trees over here, can go back in the crate, can go to a step stool perch right back over here that it's been trained to go to. It has a lot of opportunities to go different places and earn reinforcers. There's another step stool perch. Anytime we train a bird to fly outside, and we definitely have a lot of birds, and I've got about 40 trainers on staff. Before we get a bird outside, we always teach them to go to things like these bailout perches, we call them step stools. And we also fly them in an area where if something does happen, a dog runs up or something, they can go to a tree. Um, then control, the ability to change one's environment. Alligood and Friedman, Dr. Susan Friedman said that performing behavior for expected outcomes, and individuals exercise control by making choices. This skunk has learned to follow this person, makes a choice to follow the person because it expects certain outcomes through its reinforcement history. So in that way, it controls the reinforcers. You see what I mean? The animal does a behavior and controls the reinforcers. Shy Mountain Zoo is just one of my favorites. I've worked there for a lot of years. They do amazing things with training. A lot of people would just pick up small animals like this chameleon, but they teach the animal to step out on the hand. They have control. We do shows. We do bird shows all over the world, really. I've set up a lot of different shows. Nowadays, we've taken jesses off of our birds. So in our shows, we really don't have birds with jesses on anymore because we give them more control. That's with the exception of the bald eagle that we have in this particular show. We have jesses on that bird because she's non-flighted. And if she were to try to fly off our hand, she'd probably end up in the audience somewhere. So Gold Diamond wrote way back in 1974, the more choices, the more degrees of behavioral freedom. And Skinner wrote, high degrees of freedom can be considered in situations where there is no aversive control of behavior. So these jesses on a raptor's legs, they do limit the control a little bit. So the degrees of freedom are reduced just a little bit. But, here's the thing. In the zoo world, a lot of people have ambassador animals, and our high priority is to keep animals safe. That's why we put a leash on a dog when we walk him near a highway. That's why we put jesses on raptors that are not yet ready to fly free. So we have to keep them safe, but it's the way you use those restraints. And, by definition, the ambassador animal programs often use restraints of one way or another with almost any of the animals that are in the ambassador animal programs. So just as are one thing that are right to use, absolutely right to use in most situations. But when you're free flying a bird like we do with our birds, we don't have any sort of restraints on the birds at all anymore. We do shows all over, and this is one we do at a park here. And we have actually at this facility, we have over 100 macaws. We have 4 teams of more than 25, and they fly in like this. I don't I don't know what's better, the guy trying to catch a bird on his finger or the lady yelling, "Oh my God." but it's really fun. We do a 5-minute presentation, and then all these birds fly back home. They fly here a half a mile away, fly back home a half a mile away. There's a blue-throated macaw right there, another one there. He gets a close look at that blue-throated macaw. Just a little more insights into some of the things that we do in our company. Blue-throated macaw is one of the rarest parrots in the wild. There's less than 400 in the wild. They're only found in Bolivia. It took us 12 years to get permits to take blue-throated macaws back to Bolivia. And this past September, Rob, our curator, and I took 14 blue-throated macaws to Bolivia to participate in a breeding program that we'll set up once they have the permits in place. And youngsters that are hatched there in this breeding compound will be fostered into wild nests that have failed. Maybe fertile eggs will be fostered into the nest. So it's a really great conservation program that we're involved with. And we do that in partnership with the World Parrot Trust. World Parrot Trust has biologists in the field, and they've been there for 10 or 15 years. So all those birds fly back home. Not all of them make it all the way back home, like this pair of scarlet macaws that are clipping on the browse up there and entertaining the youngsters down there, very enriching for the youngsters. And again, those macaws can go wherever they want. Sometimes they'll travel miles, sometimes 2 miles away, but they always come back. We've done this show for over 10 years now, never lost a bird. And it's not because we starve the birds, it's because we, of the way we give the animals control, the way we have high trusting relationships with the animals, and et cetera, et cetera. When they come home, they have a lot of things to do. We put browse in there every couple days, have a lot of things to chew on and play with. And free choice is having multiple opportunities to receive desired outcomes. You can see these birds aren't all that hungry. She's walking by with a bowl of peanuts, but there's all kinds of other food on the table with fruits, vegetables, pellets, etc. And they don't eat that pumpkin. All these guys are chewing the pumpkin apart. It's part of their enrichment. But they have a lot of opportunity to earn reinforcers of all different types, not just food. There's many other types of reinforcers. So we hear all the time, and I consulted a lot of zoos, well over 100 now, but I hear all the time people saying, well, we have to give the animal an opportunity to say no. And all the time in this ambassador animal world, people are saying, well, the animal said no. I opened the crate for the bird to come out or for that hedgehog to come out, and the animal said no. So I have to close the door, and then I have to get the animal its reinforcers because we have to feed the animal. So I have a conflict with that. And my conflict is, even though we are giving the animal the opportunity to say no and giving the animal a voice, my conflict is that that animal maybe shouldn't have been there at that ambassador animal program if it wasn't ready to walk out of the crate and don't go do what nature built it to do. You know, we talk a lot about in our ambassador animal programs that we want to exhibit natural behavior of the animals. And when we train animals, we also want to do natural or species appropriate behavior. And we also understand that training gives the animal control the reinforcers. And training is just one of the best environment enrichment opportunities that we can give them. Training done right is very, very enriching for animals, far more enriching than even the most complicated puzzle feeders, because animals can think about how to earn the reinforcers just like their wild counterparts. So if you open the crate door and the bird won't come out or the animal won't come out, then you close the door. You're, in a sense, you're denying that animal the opportunity to come out and do what nature built it to do, to use its behavior to earn a reinforcer. And that animal doesn't get the mental or the physical exercise that should go along with training and ambassador animal programs. So I say, when you open the crate door and the animal won't come out to participate, let that be a call to action for you to think about how to train that animal and better prepare the animal to perform the way you want it to perform in these ambassador animal programs. And that means generalizing the behavior to novel environments. That's what it comes down to. Before we take any animal, any of our animals out on programs, we are always sure that those animals are going to perform, not because they're hungry. That's not our tool for motivating animals, but because we prepared them by working with them in many different environments. So we want to make sure that when we have a bird or any other animal that we work with, and we give it an opportunity to come out and do species appropriate behavior, that the bird is ready to do that. So when you hear people say that the animal should have the opportunity to say no, yes, it should have the opportunity to say no, but you should better prepare the animal to participate. But in the wild, animals don't have a lot of opportunity to say no because animals have to earn a living. All the time, animals have to respond to their environment. They have to do behavior. Sometimes it's dangerous to earn behavior. Sometimes it's really dangerous and difficult, but they have to do what nature built them to do if they're going to feed the kids. So, this type of behavior that we see in the wild, we can come close to replicating it through really good training, giving the animals opportunities to do what nature built them to do, species appropriate behavior, to earn reinforcers, much like their wild counterparts. So that's the way I think about behavior and training. I'm giving animals opportunity and motivation to do natural behavior like their wild counterparts. When we talk about training, we talk about training on the continuum. Over there on that side is coercion. And with coercion, there's no choice. The animal has to do the behavior because you're forcing the animal to do the behavior. And there's aversive stimuli. Aversive is something the animal will work to avoid. That's coercion. Over here on the far side, the right side, is genuine choice. Gold Diamond talked about this in 1974, where there's equal effort to do two different or more behaviors that'll result in equal reinforcers. That's genuine choice. So to do two different behaviors that earn equal reinforcers, it's a great thing when you can accomplish it, but it's not always possible, right? Our training is in the middle. Our training is right in the middle. We're always leaning toward giving the animal as much choice and as much control as possible. So we're always leaning toward that genuine choice side. And we're always promoting welfare. That's our goal. Everything we do with animals is looking through the welfare lens because that's our goal. It's a little different from the way I grew up many, many years ago doing shows back in the 70s and 80s. But nowadays, we do things differently, and differently meaning always thinking about welfare.
Rush. Good boy. Floss. Good boy.
So this is happening in zoos all over the world now. People are training animals to participate in husbandry and medical behaviors and things. But if you have a youngster and you want to teach that youngster how to participate in toothbrushing, you might Google it, and you could find a place called Expert Village. And that's where they teach you how to teach your child to participate in toothbrushing.
And so what I do is I just take her, and it's a fit all the time, and I just brush as good as I can. Down. And it does work great with them in a chair where they're strapped down. And
It works great with them in a chair where they're strapped down. Isn't that amazing? It's not so amazing when you think of the way humans grow up. We grow up in a punishing society. Humans, kind of because of our history, We want to force and coerce and control animals in our lives, including the human animals in our lives. Humans want control. I was consulting at a zoo a couple of years ago where they already had a behavior consultant from outside. And but I was walking through, I did a presentation, then I walked through and got a tour. We went through this one corridor where this not this leopard, but another leopard was. And as we walked by, that leopard came at us with everything it had, hooked onto the mesh and everything. And I turned back to the person and I said, okay, let's just keep going. And she said, no, no, we have to wait. We have to stay here. I said, okay. So I waited, and I took my eyes off of the leopard. My dog is participating. Took my eyes off the leopard, and after a little bit, she said, "Okay, we can go." So we walked outside, and she said, "Well, what did you think?" And I said, "Well, what did you think?" She said, "Well, our consultant said that we can't leave when that leopard aggresses on us because that's what he wants. And we don't want to give him what he wants by leaving, because if we leave, that might reinforce the behavior of aggressing on the wires." I said, "Okay." And then she asked me, "What do you think?" And I said, "All right. For me, it all depends on who you want to be to that leopard. Do you want to be the alpha, the dominant? Do you want to be the boss of that leopard? You'll never be that. At best, in my world, you're going to be an equal. So, how do we get that leopard to want us to come by, to want us to be there? Because I'm never going to face off a leopard and try to force it to like me. And that's what was happening there. So we talked about a plan, and the plan was you just walk by, throw a piece of food, and keep walking. Walk by again, throw a piece of food, and keep walking. And that's called counter conditioning. All we're doing is putting trust into the trust account. Every time, right now, every time the leopard sees somebody, it goes, "Oh crap, here he comes." We want the leopard to go, "Oh boy, here he comes." Because every time I walk by, I give a little piece of food. I just drop it and keep walking. And this does not mean stop and wait for the leopard to have calm behavior. You're going to probably upset the leopard, because that leopard is giving you a very strong voice through its body language telling you to leave. And you stand there looking at it, waiting for it to calm down so you can reinforce. You're going to cause more and more frustration. Now, if you have a really good relationship with that leopard and you're going into a training session and the leopard's really anxious, bouncing around and things, that's when you can reinforce calm behavior. Small approximations in a matter of 1 second or 2 seconds of calm behavior. That's the right time to do it. But not when that animal is afraid of you and aggressing on you out of fear or escape. You know, escape behavior is often shown by aggression. Animals aggress on people often because they're afraid of them. So many people have this attitude. When an animal like that does something, they say, "Make sure he knows you're the boss. Don't let him get away with that. He's just messing with your mind." All those things give you insights into who that person wants to be to this animal. And it's our nature. We grow up in a punishing society. So it's normal for people to want to control animals. We do that with leashes and everything else. It's hard for people to learn to use positive reinforcement because we grow up wanting to control animals. And that's one of the things I'm really going to talk about here tonight is how to create environments with animals where they want to be with you, not that they want to obey your commands, which is the way so many people think, but that they really want to be with you. And you build a strong, trusting relationship. Humans want control, but animals want control too.
Great. Great. Great.
We set that up in a workshop that we did here at the ranch. So just a couple examples. I did a workshop and a consulting project at Little Rock Zoo. And I came back after, I was there maybe a month after I did the first lecture. And the reptile keeper said, "Steve, are you coming to the reptile building?" I said, "Sure." So went over there and he said, "We have a fire-bellied newt. I want to show you what we do with it." And I had no idea what a fire-bellied newt was, but he showed me and he said he used to have to take a net and chase it around the aquarium, get it in the net, bring it over to a feeder bin. And now here's what he taught him in a couple of weeks. He taught this newt when he taps the water, the newt swims up and swims into his hand. He brought him over and just showed him off to us. Oh, that's a fire-bellied newt. And then he brings him over to the feeder bin where he would normally take him to, but in a net. Now look at this newt's eyes. This newt knows what's going to happen. This is where he gets fed. That's a delayed reinforcer for going into the person's hand. Think of that newt's welfare. Think of how his welfare just went through the roof. We give animals control. Look at who's in control here. She's just crate training this Amazon parrot. It went to the door. We opened the door. Look at what happened. It went right back inside. If it wanted to go outside, it would have gone outside. But it went to the door, and when we opened it, it went back to where the reinforcers were. We gave the animal control of the door. At Arizona, which, by the way, is just a fabulous park. I love this place. And you want to see great trainers? Go to Arizona. Great trainers all across that park. It's a drive-through park, but they had wolves before we started working with them in this yard right here. These wolves didn't want to go in the yard because they had been trapped in there or something. So we got there and we started helping them develop some strategies for giving the wolves some control. So Adam is one of our trainers and just throws some baiting out there. That's a piece of meat. It's called a bait when the animal sees the food. And then finally, the wolves started coming inside. Now, the wolf is on station. This is probably day 2 or 3. Now, watch what happens when this wolf goes over to the door that just closed. We open the door. Look at what happened. The wolf came right back. I don't know what's in the wolf's head. I believe nobody can read an animal's mind, but I can read his body language. That when he goes to the door and sees that it opens on his approach, that gives him some sort of indication that he controls the door. See that? Comes right back to where the reinforcers are. That level of control of the door is a reinforcer for future behavior of coming in this yard. And control is a primary reinforcer. Just like food, water, shelter, the applied behavior analysis community has shown a long time ago that control is a primary reinforcer, meaning you're born knowing. You don't have to learn. That control is good. You're born knowing. And we can talk more about that if you want the experiments. And then they wanted to do hip injections with them. So we looked around and we found this this strap that was on a bale of hay, and we bent it in half and we held it through the wire, through that mesh, because we wanted the wolf to touch it. We're not going to touch the wolf. When people do injection training, they focus on the goal. Get them in a place where you can jab them with a syringe. That's not how we do injection training. We help the animal understand it has control of the pressure. So the first step is put this in a place where he'll walk by, touched it with his hip, got a bridge, and he got a reinforcer. The person in the back is the one who bridges for the person in the front to give the food. Now, they use syringe poles when they go to give an animal an injection, a hip injection, like that with most of the animals in the park. So here's a pole with no syringe on it. And so many people at this point would be using a blunted needle. Well, watch what happens if he had a blunted needle.
Good.
He puts a little bit of pressure on. As soon as he touches it, he gets a reinforcer.
Good.
Tiny little pressure. The wolf controls the pressure. Now watch this. This is the syringe with no needle on it, but watch how much he pushes on it.
Good.
You see that? Can you imagine what would happen if there was a blunted needle on that? You know, I've had 3 different people from 3 different zoos tell me that they've used the blunted needle and actually penetrated the skin of an animal with a blunted needle. I encourage people to rethink the blunted needle and just use a syringe, no needle on it, put it in a place where you can cue the animal to put pressure on it. And that animal puts so much pressure on that syringe with no needle that when you finally put a needle on it and you give an injection, the animal will hardly even feel it. Here's what it looks like. Here's the actual anesthetic injection.
Okay, I'm recording now.
This is where they were anesthetizing this wolf. Watch how he pushes in. See that? And that wolf will turn around, come back, get another injection. And by the way, you saw the trainer there put her arm way over, like directing its head. She doesn't have to do that. You saw in the first couple of videos that all you have to do is say poke, and the animal pushes into that syringe, in this case, to take the injection. So that's so successful with these wolves, and all their wolves now do it. But they ended up putting it on show. Now they set up a place where the guests can get off the bus on the drive-through and come over here and get a lecture about wolves and how much we care about our wolves, that we teach them to voluntarily participate in their own health care. And we show how that wolf backs into the syringe. They also do it with their bears. Here's their veterinarian giving the bear a vaccination. Just like that. So I have video of so many different animals, giraffe and all kinds of animals that give themselves injections. It's so much better that way because the animal has control. Because the animal has learned to put so much pressure on that syringe that when you finally put a needle on it, it'll barely even feel it. Plus, when you give that animal an injection, it'll turn around, come back, and do it again and again and again. Where most people in the industry right now, they get them in a place where in a squeeze cage, in a chute, in some where they can reach in and jab the animal with the syringe. They're focused on the goal. I'm focused on the process. And the process is helping the animal understand how to be a voluntary participant in all of its healthcare, including injections. The animal has control. So here's another good example of control. This is at Perth Zoo when I was consulting there. Now, this is one strategy. Reinforce when the panda puts its arm through, and now they're going to manipulate the vein. But look at what they're doing with the food. They're feeding consistently. And look at where that panda's eyes are. That panda is cross-eyed on the food. That panda doesn't see what's going on down there with her arm. So in this way, the animal has less control because when that poke happens, she doesn't know it's coming and she can easily pull back. But contrast that with this at Cheyenne Mountain Zoo, which again, you want to see great trainers, go to Cheyenne Mountain Zoo. And watch how they do this.
Poke.
Trainer says poke, the vet tech has the needle, and the orangutan is looking at the needle. And when that needle penetrates the skin, there's a reinforcer. Now, in this case, I don't think she's actually giving, I don't think she's actually getting blood. I think she's just putting pressure on the vein. This is such an important part, by the way. When you're doing blood draw with any animal, you do the same thing as with the injection. That is, you put pressure. You put pressure on the area and get the animal used to pressure. Here's Caldwell Zoo. Some more great trainers over there. Now watch, we want the animal to see what's going on. This is a very early stage. We're just getting the animal used to feeling something on its hip, but see how They move the prompt so the animal can look back and see what's going on back there, so there's no surprise. We want animals to know. So many people in the industry want animals to be distracted. So they're feed while you sneak in some pressure. It works, but it doesn't work at the level of giving the animal control and understanding that taking a little bit of pressure is going to earn a higher value reinforcer. At Shy Mountain Zoo, this about a year ago, she's got a Dremel right here. And for a few months, she said she's been trying to Dremel the toenails on this orangutan. But watch what happens when she pulls the Dremel out from under her arm. Watch what happens with her foot. Yep, see? That's what happens every time. So I said, hold it in one spot and just see if you can get him to touch it. Now he's exploring and
Can you
touching.
try it right by his face? Where
And
he
so
can
I
rip
said,
it?
try it by his face. Now watch what happens when he has full control.
Good.
See that? It's a lot different when the animal controls. This is such an important piece about control. Give the animal control in every way. So instead of you being in control and trying to Dremel the nail, put the Dremel there and let the orangutan Dremel the nail. This is how most people do blood draw from the tail of most big cats. It works. So you get a snake hook, you get the tail out, put the tail in your hand, but look what happened when the cat lost control of its tail. So you pull it back, you try to give food out front to distract the animal, and then the animal still doesn't have control, but he wants control. Animals want control. Contrast that with Shy Mountain Zoo. The cue, tail. Watch what this lion does. That's the way I think everybody ought to teach animals to participate, by giving control. That lion will do this all day long. You can do blood pressure cuff like she's doing there. You can do blood. Matter of fact, all their lions do this. All the big cats at the zoo do it this way. You have to have a tail port, which is important. So if you build new indoor holding areas, build in a tail port so you can do that. We need to give animals control, but we also need to keep them safe. When you use a leash, it's a loose leash. See how loose it is on this warthog? But you can't give them full control because sometimes you have to control the animal to keep them from getting into trouble. We're knocking a cameraman over. All right, give an animal voice and a vote. Body language, that's how animals communicate with us. And their body language through their subtle, tiny little behavior, their feathers, their fur, their hair, little tiny nuanced behaviors. Expert trainers can see those tiny little behaviors by the look of the eye, the way an animal holds its ears or its fur, its hair. That body language of the animal is as important as our body language through cues, prompts, bridges, etc. Animals should have a voice and a vote in how you interact with them. It's really different from trying to be the dominant, the alpha, the flock leader, etc. When you give up that control and you give that animal an equal voice, what's going to happen then is those animals are going to have a different relationship with you. So many people say, oh, don't let him do that. He's training you, or don't let him train you. And that phrase is always so negative. People say, oh, I think he's trying to train me. You never know what an animal's thinking. What you do know is what the animal does. And what animals are doing are trying to find ways to earn reinforcers. So my world, an animal should be trying to train me. That's when I know that I've succeeded. When the animal does things that it knows will get me to give it a reinforcer, give it a treat, then in that way, the animal's training me. So I'm always looking for ways that the animal can train me. I think that's a gauge of success. Training session starts the moment you make eye contact with the animal. So many people blunder into a training session. They get all their training paraphernalia set up in front of the animal in the back holding area and stuff. They've got all their tools. They've got their don't shoot the dog book. They've got everything ready. And then they look up and the animal's gone. The very first thing that you should do in your training session is reinforce the animal for being at station. Reinforce that behavior. That's one of the hardest behaviors, is to get an animal to come to station, and you want to reinforce it. And the other thing I think that is really beneficial is to reinforce calm attentive behavior. When the animal is calm, reinforce that behavior. If the animal gets confused, it might come back to neutral, look you in the eye in a calm way, and you can give it a reinforcer. If the animal's confused or has just done a behavior, it comes back to station, looks at you in the eye, and you give it a cue. And that cue will, for a new behavior, will reinforce the behavior of calm attentive behavior. Here's a common problem: timeouts. Timeouts are negative punishers. This is what a timeout looks like with this goat. Seriously, how bad do you feel for that goat? It's so confused. It has no idea what it did. I think a lot of times people give timeouts because they want to control. They want to be in charge. They want to show the animal. They don't want the animal to get away with that. Make sure he knows I'm the boss. It doesn't tell an animal what to do. At best, timeouts tell an animal what not to do. But timeouts so rarely decrease behavior. I encourage people to view timeouts as your failure, not the animal's failure. It's your failure. Somebody asked me in a workshop one time, are you saying that when a orangutan spits in your face, you won't give her a timeout? I said, no, I wouldn't. I would give her ask for her foot, ask for her hand, reinforce both those with food, give her a bunch of food for the last behavior. Then I'd go clean up and build a plan for how I will never be in that situation with that animal again. Because whatever it was I did that caused her to spit, it was my fault, my problem, not hers. My plan would maybe be come back and do less behaviors in the next session, higher value reinforcers, higher rate of reinforcement to keep her in the game, just to avoid her spitting again. An animal that learns to do a behavior like that would just get better at it. So it's important to replace that behavior with a more desirable behavior, and that is doing all these other behaviors that are more desirable. Two-way communication. Here at Arizona, this is one of the things we do at most of the places we consult at, is we encourage people to back away from the animal. So many people are right up against the wire to work with animals, and the animals are cross-eyed on your hands, your prompts, and everything. But when you back away, the animal can see the environment and take the cues from farther away and be more aware of what's going on. And that gives you an opportunity then to do more things, like one person doing station training with these three young brown bears.
That's okay. There you go. You got it.
She can work these bears from a distance. She doesn't have to be right on top of them. And look at what great participation they're giving, what control the reinforcers have on their behavior. She gave that one a cue to sit, and that one sat. So she reinforced it. No problem. We don't have to control every animal. Gave a cue, it sat, reinforced that behavior. but we're not going to punish animals for doing something that they think is right because they got that cue before and got a reinforcer. But see how well behaved these bears are? It's because we gave them control and high rates of high value reinforcement. All right, winding down here. Experts back the bridge. Here's what happens a lot of times in training in zoos. See what happened there? She asked for a lot of behaviors, bridged with the clicker multiple behaviors, but didn't give food after every click. Some people will say, well, that's a variable schedule of reinforcement. But bridging without backing up with food is not a variable schedule of reinforcement. Technically, it's respondent extinction. So, and I've had many conversations with people at least twice in big rooms of a couple hundred people at conferences where people would stand up and say, that's a variable schedule. And by the way, before I say anything else, the person doing the training there allowed me to use this video as a teaching tool. She, after we talked about it and she changed what she was doing, had got a lot better behavior out of the gorilla. But I really thank her all the time for allowing me to use that video so that I can show this very common occurrence in training in zoos. So people have said that is a variable schedule of reinforcement. Well, in the zoo world, in the science world, there is a continuous schedule of reinforcement. There's intermittent schedule of reinforcement. Continuous, every correct performance gets a reinforcer. Intermittent means not every correct occurrence of the behavior gets a reinforcer. There's variable ratio, variable interval, lots of variables. So when somebody asks me, says, well, it's a variable schedule, I just ask them, is your clicker a reinforcer? Yes, it's a secondary reinforcer. Well, therefore, then you're in a continuous schedule of reinforcement, not variable. But look to the science. I mean, Pavlov, with his dogs, a lot of really good information came from his work, where he paired a metronome sound with meat powder that he gave to the dog. Metronome sound, a beat of music, metronome sound, meat powder, metronome sound, meat powder. Pretty soon, metronome sound, salivation in the dog, metronome sound stimulated salivation in the dog, just like you pair your clicker with food. People call it charging the clicker. You make that connection in a classical conditioning way. Now, when Pavlov wrote about this stuff, he wrote up his findings with these experiments, and his work was translated to English. Well, his work, he said, it's a conditional reinforcer, meaning it has meaning, that metronome sound has meaning based on the pairing of the backup reinforcer, in his case, the meat powder. So your clicker has meaning based on, conditional on the pairing with the food. When they translated his work to English, they called it a conditioned reinforcer. Conditioned meaning you condition a behavior, you condition the clicker, you condition the animal or something. But his meaning was it has meaning only conditional on the pairing with the backup. You know, after a while, his assistant wrote up the next level of experiments, and that was when they quit following the metronome sound with meat powder. When they quit following the metronome sound with meat powder, salivation quickly finished, quickly ended, because it was an extinction trial. It's the same as when you click and don't back it up with food. It's an extinction trial. And pretty soon, that clicker loses its meaning. By the way, we use verbal bridges good with all the animals in the zoo, except when we're training an animal far away or an animal underwater, we'll use a whistle underwater. So what if you want to do multiple behaviors? What if you're training dolphins and you want to do water work and you want to do 5 or 6 behaviors with a person in the water with that dolphin? No problem. You just do a sequence of behavior. This is a sequence. Watch with this gorilla.
Target. Hold. Target. Hold. Chest. Just touch. Good.
See that? All those behaviors and one bridge at the end. All those behaviors were cued. But there's reinforcers. You know, scientifically, when you take a deep dive into it, the cue for behavior number 2 is a reinforcer for behavior number 1. The cue for behavior number 3 is a reinforcer for behavior number 2. Because the gorilla knows it's always getting closer to the end where it's going to get a lot of high value reinforcers after the bridge at the end. So there's a lot of people out there who are still blazing their clickers, click, 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 and then given food. But what explains when the animals keep working in this misguided system? It's because the animals start looking for the most salient information that food is coming. They quit listening to the bridge and they start watching with their eyes, and the visual bridge. A lot of people don't realize this is happening. The visual bridge of the trainer's hands starting to move toward the animal to give the food, or the person moving toward the food chute to reinforce, like this wild dog. That's a bridge. That's a bridging stimulus. It's a visual bridge. People don't recognize it. So watch closely with this dog here. This dog knows this bridge as well as any, but watch when he moves in relation to the bridge. You see that pause? She whistled. I'll play it one more time. She whistled. The dog held still until she moved. As soon as she moved, the dog moved. See that? The dog is watching her body language. Animals watch your body language more than they listen to your bridging stimuli, more than they listen to your whistle or your clicker when their eyes are focused on you. When their eyes are away, absolutely, they're listening to the bridge. Not a problem at all. But most of the time when we're training animals eye to eye, they're really keyed in on your hand. So I wrote a paper with Dr. Susan Friedman called Blazing Clickers. You can look for it on our website at Natural Encounters. A couple more things as I finish up here. First of all, behavior is not in the animal. People blame the animal for a lot of stuff. Oh, he's stubborn. He's aloof. He's messing with my mind. He's not motivated. He's whatever he is. He's not anything other than the animal that you're training. In this case, this young orangutan is an orangutan, and it's looking for reinforcers. He's not messing with your mind. He's trying to earn reinforcers. The animal's behavior is in the conditions that we create. That's where behavior comes from. It's the antecedent conditions we create, things that happen or in the environment before behavior occurs, and consequence conditions that we create, things that happen after the behavior occurs. That's all we do as trainers. We adjust antecedent conditions to make the right behavior easy to do. We adjust consequence conditions to make the right behavior worth doing again. Those are concepts that I learned from Dr. Susan Friedman, just one of the great animal behaviorists. So I did then what I knew how to do. Now that I know better, I do better. Doing better for animals, I believe, involves using the most positive, least intrusive, and effective strategies, building trusting relationships with animals, and empowering animals with a voice and a vote in your relationship, which leads to giving them more choice and more control in their environment, which ultimately leads to better welfare. The end. All right. I'm going to stop my share, get back
Back to questions or on to questions, right?
on to
Thank you
questions.
so much. It is always a pleasure to hear you speak, and I always learn something new. I had a question prepared for you. My question was actually about clicker usage and verbal bridges. So I'm so excited that you went over that already. We can just skip to everybody else's questions. And funny enough, you ended with a picture of a giraffe taking an injection, and our first question is about a giraffe taking an injection. So,
Great.
how would you encourage a giraffe to want to touch a trainer's hand or a needle on their neck for a blood draw?
Yeah, it's such a good question. And I'm kicking myself now because to get this down to 45 minutes, I took my giraffe video out. But we at Cheyenne Mountain Zoo, we had a giraffe that didn't want people to touch it at all, was really nervous of the touch, and they wanted a shoulder injection. We set up a actually the director of the zoo, Bob Chastain, came from the horticulture department. So we talked about what we needed. He put a black irrigation tube attached to the side of the wall right there, and there was bars in the indoor holding area. And we just brought the giraffe passing by over to get food and then back this way. Whenever she moved this way, she would touch this black irrigation tube. As soon as she touched it, bridge, reinforce, bridge, reinforce. So she was touching it. Now she learned, touch that, just stand in one spot, lean into it and touch it. Then we replace that with a person's hand, lean in and touch the hand, put a lot of pressure. She was leaning all the way over and pushing this person back. And then we replace that with a syringe with no needle and then put the needle on it. She's given herself an injection.
Have to ask, do you know what reinforcer they were using?
That's a great question. I don't. I'm trying to
That's okay.
picture it.
I didn't figure you knew that one.
Yeah,
That's
because
at the front end.
yeah, because my eyes are down here,
Yep.
and that reinforcer is way the heck up there.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I
Yeah.
don't.
No problem. I do want to, I got too excited about asking questions. I want to remind everybody that they need to put their questions in the Q&A. And if you see a question that you like, you can give it a thumbs up and that will move it to the top of the screen. I apologize. Again, I got too excited about it.
No problem.
All right. And we do have questions coming in.
Okay.
Have you ever had an instance where the body language was misunderstood? And if so, how do you accommodate for that in your training?
Well, there's a lot of times where body language is misunderstood. You know, as trainers, we're doing our best to make guesses. And, you know, the more we train, the better our latent database is and better intuition. Um, I can't read a dolphin's body language. Dolphin trainers, man, they're so good at that. Mammals, I am really good at reading most mammals, but there are times when I just can't figure it out. So I use my intuition. I do what I think might be right. And sometimes I'm right, sometimes I'm wrong. And here's a problem in the zoo community. A lot of times people fail to get out of their comfort zone and try new things because they're afraid of failure. Here's the way I think about failure and the way that I teach people. Failure is simply an opportunity to start again with more information. So you make a mistake. That's how every creature on the planet has evolved their behavior, by making mistakes, learning from the mistake, and not doing it again. But when you're in an environment that really encourages people to embrace the information they learn from their mistakes, then you don't hide your mistakes. When you're in a community where people are scorned and criticized for making a mistake, you're never going to grow. So that's a difficult place to be.
Excellent. Okay, we have an elephant question. Lots of interest in this elephant question. This person that was working with elephants found that their elephant was demonstrating a stomping behavior, demanding food, and they were giving a timeout. And now they're reconsidering. So, what's the next step in this reconsideration to get the elephant to stop stomping?
Yeah, a great question, by the way, and I like that the timeout aspect was part of this because it's so important for people to realize how easy it is for us to get into this, go down this rabbit hole where we're trying to show this animal who's boss or whatever it
Mhm.
is. And that's what timeouts typically are. I'll show you, I'm going to take all the food and walk away. So my strategy is almost always the exact same. And that is rather than ever try to stop behavior, I always think about how to start another behavior that'll replace that unwanted behavior. See, for every action an animal does, like that stomping or anything else, there's motivation. Motivation is always at the base level to gain pleasure or avoid pain. So most animals are doing things to gain something that they want. So if you figure out what that animal wants by stomping, it might want more food or might want attention or might want something. Find a way for the animal to do a different behavior that where the animal can receive equal or greater value reinforcers. So instead of stomping, if you know when that stomping is going to happen, then before that, give the animal another behavior, an easy behavior it can do. And that elephant, no doubt, has a large repertoire of behaviors. Ask the animal to do another behavior that's more acceptable and reinforce that. So we ignore wrong behavior and we reinforce more desirable behavior, sometimes incompatible behavior that the animal can't possibly do the stomping when it's doing this other thing, whatever that is, holding a foot up or something. But if we give that animal an opportunity to do another behavior to earn a reinforcer that's equal or greater to the other reinforcer that it was stomping for, then that's the secret to it. Just replace that behavior with something you like.
You. You also got a lot of attention and interest in the lion backing up video. And there are a great number of us that would like to know what the beginning behaviors in backing a lion up are.
Yeah. And again, you can do it many, many different ways. But again, touching the rear end, teaching the animal to push into a touch on the rear end, no problem. That's a good way to get an animal to back up. Teaching an animal the concept of backup. Most giraffe trainers nowadays are given a backup cue, and animal learns to back up. You can do a backup cue, whether it's a visual cue or verbal cue, and that lion knows a verbal cue back. So it's really about getting the animal into the right spot, then teaching the animal to back up. But more importantly than that is teaching the animal to move its tail. And the way they started it was they have a spot where the animal can um, lay with its rear end up against a panel that has, it's a door that has a gap about like this. And the animal's tail can come underneath the door. So when the animal's tail gets under the door, bridge and reinforce. The person back by the tail says good, and the person out front by the mouth gives a reinforcer. Then the tail finally comes out, good, reinforce. And then you wait for the tail to twitch. Just a little tiny twitch of the tail, good, bridge that. Pretty soon, the lion, the tiger, whatever it is, learns twitch the tail, good. And then twitch the tail, good. Then you get them over by the port. And then you get them to where they'll twitch the tail near the port. And finally, the closer it gets to the port, then you reinforce those approximations and go into the port. Once it comes out of the port, and by the way, you've already taught that a little compression on the tail is a good thing, gets high value reinforcer. Once the tail comes out of the port, put a little pressure on the tail, bridge and reinforce. No longer is it twitching, it's just waiting for a little more pressure. So that's kind of the steps, all about approximations.
That's interesting. I think you have a lot of us that are about to train our lions.
Oh, I
That's a
hope
really
so.
interesting one. I love that.
You give them control like that, and
Yeah.
it's amazing what they'll do.
Yeah, that's such a great idea. Um, Now we're going to roll back to less species specific questions, but very general. If you are a new animal trainer and you are looking to build relationships with the animals that you are intending to train, what do you think are the key points that you need to work on?
Key points are, first of all, recognizing the animal's body language. Start with that. Put trust into the trust account. You know, all of us have a trust account with every animal. When we do something the animal likes, we make a deposit. We do something the animal dislikes, we make a withdrawal. So unfortunately, a lot of people make more withdrawals than they do deposits. And that's when the animals aggress or they escape, they run away, they whatever. That's when we have behavior problems, when we have low trust. So building trust is just doing things the animal likes, whether it's passing by, giving a piece of food, given the animal control of a door, major deposit into your trust account when the animal sees you manipulate that door, and major trust account with the door and being inside a crate or indoor holding or whatever. So build trust through positive reinforcement, positive experiences of one way or another, and then do really easy behaviors. When the animal does a behavior at a high rate, let's say it's a lion, um, something as simple as moving up toward the bars or the barrier, the mesh, reinforce that, reinforce it again, moving its head sideways, reinforce that. Go for small behaviors and teach the animal to learn. Learning to learn is one of the most important points. And when that animal learns that it can do behavior for reinforcers, it's going to be more creative about how to earn those reinforcers. So once that animal learns that its behavior has function and the function is to get a reinforcer from the trainer, that light bulb goes on, and pretty soon that animal is going to be
Yeah.
throwing out lots of behavior. That's when you teach calm attentive behavior. Sit in front of me calmly and get a reinforcer. Duration of calm behavior, 5-10 seconds, gets a reinforcer. And that will keep the animal from throwing all these different behaviors out that you've reinforced in the past. So that's kind of the structure for me. Read the body language, build a trusting relationship, and then train a couple easy behaviors to get the animal to learn that it can do behaviors for you to give it a reinforcer.
Pairs very well with the next question. This person is working with parent raised wolves and is curious how to build that trust account with very skittish parent raised nervous wolves.
Yeah, nice one. We do a lot of training in protected contact where animals are protected from us and barriers, not inside holding. Don't train inside holding because of the power of escape is so limited. Animals want escape opportunities. So train out on exhibit. Maybe, let's say you've got some kind of a fence, maybe it's a chain link fence where you can get close to the wolf. If there's hot wire, it makes it a bit more of a challenge. But if there isn't hot wire where you can reinforce through the chain link, like the video I showed of the cheetah, I think just starting to do hip injections. If you can give a place where the animal has a lot of escape opportunity, then the animal will be more likely to approach. Even if you have to just throw food over the fence in the beginning and start pairing your presence with the food that comes over the fence, pretty soon the animal is just going to approach, and you can build approximations of approach behavior with high value reinforcers.
Excellent. On to sea lions. We have a question about sea lions that recently came from another facility that frequently break during sessions. Is this a behavior that needs to be curbed? And how would you do that?
Yeah, and I don't know about curbed, but I encourage trainers to just really focus on what you want from the animals. So I worked on a sea lion project several years ago where the male was over here on station, no problem, but the female kept coming over and trying to get reinforcers to the point where she told me she had to put her foot with her boot right in the face of this other sea lion so she could work the male. And she said, how do I make that animal stop coming over? And I said, well, what do you want her to do? And she said, well, I want her to stay on the rock. I said, well, you know how to train that, right? Yeah, well, train it during the show.
Yeah.
Train duration of rock sitting behavior. And this is a problem, is that a lot of times with sea lions and all types of animals, we fail to train the concept of long duration. Now, we start with a couple seconds of duration. So we reinforce and turn around, then turn around and reinforce again. And turn around, walk a couple steps, reinforce again. Pretty soon, the duration can move into 10, 20, 30 seconds. But as you ramp up the amount of time the animal is waiting for the reinforcer, you increase the value of the reinforcer, because staying in one spot is a hard behavior. It's harder than moving toward the trainer.
Yeah.
So we ratchet up the reinforcers for things like duration, stationing for duration. So that's what I would do. But be focused with every animal anybody's working with. Be focused on what behavior you want and train that separately, so that when you go to show, that animal already has a 30-second duration. And then you can give her a couple fish while you're working with the other animal or animals, etc. But know that for everything an animal does, there is motivation. There's reinforcers. She breaks station. She wanders off or does whatever she does because there's a reinforcer there. Could be she's confused. Could be one time she wandered off. Somebody called her back and gave her a reinforcer at the station. And she learned, boy, these humans, it's funny. If I just wander off, they'll give me a fish for being on the station. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of things that go on like that.
It's funny. I don't know that most of us would have thought about the call back being taught by the animal, teaching us. So that's an
Yeah.
interesting way to look at it. Very good point.
A lot of animals, especially smart ones like those marine
Yeah.
mammals. And
Yeah.
you figure that out in a minute.
So this question, I love this question. I love this conversation. We're getting into choice and control, and I'm thinking back to the slide in the video where you have the newt that voluntarily firebelly newt salamander that went into the hand, which was amazing to see. So this person is not working with a newt; they're working with a rabbit that is not interested in training and doesn't seem to be food motivated. Even after attempting several reinforcers. So anytime they're interacting with the rabbit, they are stomping or actively moving away. So I guess in essence, choosing to not participate. They've tried desensitization with the crates and wagons so that they don't have to directly interact with the rabbit. What would you recommend?
Yeah, and let me say that this is a joke. I'm not poking fun at anybody, but this is our common answer. If an animal is not food motivated, it's either sick or it's dead, because animals are all food motivated, right? It's just about how we feed them. So often we give these animals food at night and they eat all their prescribed diet, that um, the veterinarian nutritionists want that rabbit to eat. They make sure that they give it that food, but they give that food non-contingently. It's not associated with any behavior. Think of the life of a rabbit in the wild. A rabbit has to do behavior to get food. It has to come out of the hole. It's got to go over there. It's got to go eat this. It's got to do things to eat food. Well, and that's in its nature. So when we give it food non-contingently, all right, here's all your food in the crate, or here's all your food over here in the yard, then we wonder why it won't work with us. It's because anyway, that we already gave it all the food and it doesn't have a reason. Here's a philosophy. We can't use food as a positive reinforcer unless we own the food. We can't use positive reinforcement unless we own the reinforcer. So whatever reinforcer we're going to use to train animals, we have to own it. Animals need to do behavior for it, just like nature owns the reinforcers that animals have to do behavior for. So when we change the way we feed animals and we hold back the food. You don't hold back the food for a rabbit for a long time at all. What we do is we find favorite food items. They always have their steady diet, whatever that is, but we find their favorite food. Arbitrarily, let's say it's carrots. So we have a little tiny piece of a carrot that we give that guy when the guy comes toward us, a little piece of carrot, because reinforcers have to be things that animals want and things that they can eat quickly. That's what reinforcers are. And we have to own them, or else we can't train with positive reinforcement. And the only thing left then is negative reinforcement, getting an animal to do things to avoid some sort of aversive stimulus, like us pushing his butt and he'll go that way or get over there and stuff. So, but we can find food that rabbits like better than anything else. And I haven't trained enough rabbits to be able to talk intelligently about specifically what those reinforcers are. But I know they're out there.
In this scenario, would it be a good next step if before they put the diet in with the rabbit, they came with the reinforcer first as just a greeting, like we were talking about in some of the
Yep.
other animals? And so you're not withholding their full daily diet, but you're maybe putting the good stuff first?
That's a great idea. Really good idea, because time of day is
Mhm.
important for training sessions. So before the morning, you take the breakfast and you get the animal to walk over and you give it some breakfast, just like you said. So
Mhm.
yeah, good idea.
I also have not trained a rabbit, but now I'm curious.
Yeah.
So the next question is also about injection training. This animal in question has a high level of needle aversion due to a previously bad experience. They've done lots of repetitions with pressing hard with various objects, and all of that goes very, very well. Not anything orange colored. But she's so in tune and so aware, the moment she sees a needle, she chooses not to offer.
Yeah. Did we say what kind of animal that was, by the way?
No, they did not.
Okay, let me tell you a story. And again, another video and photos that I left out. But Maryland Zoo has some really amazing chimpanzee training. And so when I worked there as a consultant, I watched all this great training, and I heard about um, this one female who was scared to death of needles. You could do anything you want, but you take that cap off the needle, she's yelling and screaming, climbing the walls, and everybody in the house is doing the same. So most people would just say, well, she's the one we're going to have to dart, if we need to do any blood work or anything like that on her. Because especially blood work, had her arm in the chute, no problem, but she sees that needle and she's gone. So one of the keepers there, one of the trainers there had an idea. And she took that syringe, that needle, and she clipped off about a quarter of an inch. So all you could see is that much of the needle, tiny little bit. You still saw the blue cap, but a tiny little bit of the needle. And so showed it to the chimp, no problem, reinforced, showed it to her, reinforced, ended up giving the chimp an injection in her shoulder. And she was like, oh, yeah, okay, high value reinforcer. That was all right. But you know where it led to? They want to get blood. And to get blood, you got to thread the needle down that vein, right? They got her to put her chest against the bars, the mesh, hold her arms straight out so that one arm came right up against the mesh. And that vein was right there. And they poked that needle in perpendicular to the vein, and they got blood out of that chimpanzee. Now, not only did they get blood from that chimpanzee, the other chimps now also learn to do that. It gives them more control. They're up against the bars as opposed to having their arm in a chute. So they have more control. They can back away anytime they want. But the high value reinforcer is worth it for them. So that's one way. The other way is so often people try to hide the needles or hide the syringe. And they don't want to make it about the syringe. We got to get it up there and we got to poke them in the butt, So make sure you distract them. I say make it all about the syringe. So just like that orangutan with the Dremel, try to hide the drum. No, make it all about the Dremel. And so with that animal with the syringe, it's all about the syringe. Let the animal touch it. Let the animal play with it, not grab it, depending on the animal. But anytime it comes near it, high value reinforcer. Make it worth the animal's effort to touch it because of the high value reinforcer. And when you pair the approach of that thing with food, then pretty soon the animal is going to go, come on, put that up here. Let me touch it. And that's where you need to get to. And then, if it's an animal that you can cut the cap off and give just a tiny little prick, maybe that'll work for that animal. Really tiny gauge needle, 25 or something. That's what we normally start with and use. But I'll give you one more saying. Anytime somebody says, I can't do something, my attitude is, well, you must. If you can't, you must. You have to try, because it's so easy for us to say, well, I can't do that with that animal. Well, now you and the animal have lost the opportunity for the animal to learn, lost the opportunity for you to learn. So if you say you can't do that particular syringe with that animal, now I go, you must. All right, now how are you going to do it? Well, we're going to desense from a long ways away. We're going to make that thing positive by pairing with a primary reinforcer. We're going to give the animal more control about the approach. We're going to on and on. But then what's happening then is whether you succeed or fail, you learned how to do it. And the animal learned how to do it. That's the most important thing. Solving problems is such an important part of what we do. So many people, they see a problem, wash their hands. And the animal does something wrong. Oh, it's not me being a bad trainer. It's the animal that's broken. The animal's never broken. It's all about you and your ability to train. There's so much to learn. And making mistakes is the way we learn.
True. We have a question going back to choice and endings of sessions. This person is having trouble putting their thoughts together on how to start that training. What's a good way to start a training program where an animal is ending the session on their own?
So let me get this straight. Is that where we give an end of session cue, or the animal chooses to walk away?
That is not clear to me.
Okay. Well, let me talk about end of session cues,
Mhm.
because that applies to everybody, and maybe that person will add a little more information. But end of session cues, when they work great. When you have an animal that you can give an end of session cue, whatever it is, and the animal just says, okay, good, thanks, enjoyed the time with you, and walks away, great. A lot of animals don't. A lot of animals aggress as soon as you give an end of session. I was at Melbourne Zoo in Australia, and two male lions, 2 years old brothers. End of session, and both those lions came at them with everything that they had, everything. And they walked away, the two trainers. And I said, man, did you like that? No, we hate it. I said, why do you give that end of session cue then? Well, our curator says we have to. That's good training. I said, will your curator be okay if we change it a little bit? I don't know. Well, let's go talk. We talked to the curator. Here's what we did. Let's change the meaning of end of session. So end of session, we would go end of session, take a step, and then go right back and give them food. End of session, 2 steps, come right back, give them food. We did that until end of session. We went in the office, came right back, gave them food. Tomorrow, the next day, in the shift to the next stall, we had pre-planted a bunch of food that the lions couldn't see. And so end of session doesn't mean end of food. End of session means, hang on, let me open the door. Now go explore. And they went and explored and found food. The next day, we pre-planted food out on exhibit. End of session, we opened the exhibit door. They went out, found all kinds of cool food and enrichment. So end of session no longer means end of food. It means end of food right here, but go check out what else is out there, because there's lots of great things out there. So
Very interesting. Very interesting. We have a lot of interest in the injection training, which is great because we do have an injection training webinar coming up later in our series. So I'm glad that we're circling back to this. But we do have a few more questions on it. What would be your advice on early stages of injection training to get initial movement for the lean and then the pressure?
Yeah. Um, in the very beginning, just like I did with the wolves, it's let the animal walk by and touch that thing. So as soon as it touches that thing, bridge and reinforce. We have to make that connection. And again, so many people are focused on the goal. The goal is to get the injection. That's not what the goal should be. The goal should be the process should be the goal. The process is teaching the animal that it can voluntarily participate in this procedure, and here's the steps to it. And by the way, these steps to it go so fast. So many people think injection training will take weeks and months. Injection training, that's stuff we did with the wolves that wouldn't even come in the yard and wouldn't let people come near them. It was about 2 weeks. It could have been close to 3 weeks for some of them, but that's all it was. I mean, they were touching that strap on the third day, and then they were starting to lean in because they understood the pressure. So it's really just about starting by giving the animals control, let the animals understand they put a little bit of pressure or they touch this thing just walking by and they pair it. Pavlov's dogs, metronome sound, food, metronome sound, food, touch, food, touch, food. All that pairing is a classical conditioning thing. So now they start going, hey, I get the connection. I touch that thing. And then it goes to operant. If I touch that thing, I get food. Now the animal is looking for the consequence. Touch that thing, give me food. Touch that thing. Oh, not a touch. Touch it a little harder. Oh, now give me food. Now you've taught the animal to put pressure and increasing pressure. I mean, it's a really important piece, increasing pressure. So, and that's, pretty much what it is.
Excellent. In line with that same question, there's a lot of concern about needle breakage or improper placement of the injection when the animals are giving themselves an injection. So how do you address that?
Yeah, and that's where the vet comes in. That's where practice comes in. The vet that did the bear, I didn't show all of it, but he did about 3 different practices with the bear just to make sure he had the right hole in that chain link or whatever the mesh was, so that he was hitting the right spot. With the wolf, it's positioned so when that wolf backs up, it's in the right spot. So it's not a perfect placement, probably. Heck of a lot better than darting, though, isn't it? But when you hand inject, when you just jam it in, yeah, you don't have perfect placement there either. I think you might even have more control of the placement when you can align it and give the animal a cue, and the animal will give itself an injection.
It's very true. Very true. Okay, we will not keep you much longer. I'm going to ask one final question, and then we will let everybody get back to their evenings. This question is regarding a hippo, which we have not discussed yet. The species we haven't discussed yet. They are beginning training for tusk trims. What are suggestions for the most control being allowed to this hippo as they continue to train this behavior? How do they provide him the most amount of control?
Yeah, sometimes it's best to train a scent behavior. A scent is where the animal does a behavior that tells you it's volunteering to participate now. So if you could get that guy's head on something, and that's a scent. When he puts his head on, he says, okay, I'm ready to go. And he's voluntarily participating. Then you get him to open his mouth. Now, his mouth won't move because he's laying his chin on this particular thing. But you can get him to open his mouth, hold for duration, do what you need to do. Some people might think about a bite bar, and some animals, when they're doing teeth work and stuff like that, they might get a bite bar where an animal can reach down on a bite. The challenge with that, and I caution people that if they're ever going to do that with any of their animals, you have to make sure that you're reinforcing not for a little bit of pressure so that it's just wide open mouth. There are so many carnivores now that have broken canines because people were trained open mouth and the animals went up to the mesh and they held on and the animal put a little more pressure and they taught the animal to give an increasing amount of pressure. And that's why we see canines broken on all kinds of different cats around the zoo world now. But anyway, that's what I would do is get the guy to put his chin on something. That's him giving you permission or saying, okay, I'm ready to participate. He moves his head, you stop, you just back away. It's your promise. You have your head here, now open your mouth and your head is stable. Same with giraffe and blood draw. We mentioned giraffe. I've talked to a number of different places about giraffe. And if there is a wall, we've often just put a like a pillow, and we taught the giraffe, lean your head against this thing. Long as your head is against this thing, then you've got the neck exposed. But if that head is wobbling around, it's hard to
Yeah.
get, and but if the giraffe has its head someplace, then it'll stabilize. That's a scent behavior too. Puts his head there, it says, okay, I'm ready to
Says
participate
I'm good to
in
go.
what you're
Mhm.
doing. Yeah.
Excellent. That is excellent. Steve, thank you so much again for joining us. Everybody enjoyed it. We've got tons of thank yous coming up in the chat and great presentation, great information. We will definitely ask you to come back and join us again. And to everybody who took their evening to join us for the webinar, thank you. And don't forget to check out our upcoming training schedule on zooassociation.org. Have a nice night, everybody.
Thank you very much. See you, everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you.